to talk about apprenticeship provision and what there is, we have a business engagement team, reports into Bill, and the head of that team, or a member of that team, will be very happy to meet with them and talk to them about the opportunities that we have got.
There's a generic piece in there as well about English and maths. There are funding and funding rules around needing to have English and maths at level 2 for a level 3 apprenticeship, be working towards it for a level 2 apprenticeship. Again, happy to pick up with whoever raised this around the if Exeter are taking a different approach to us. But one of the things that we are looking at for next year is to embed English and maths more into the apprenticeship delivery framework. So at the moment, we have been offering English and maths as a kind of bolt-on, generally on a Monday, and then you might have your day release programme on a Tuesday or Wednesday. That has not been popular, as you could probably understand, with employers. And actually, I think some of the question is actually that employers are choosing Exeter rather than us because the maths and English programme is more flexible there. We are doing something about that from September, and would anticipate being able to be a bit more specific about that in the next few weeks. But that's part of looking to see whether we can structure our English and maths delivery for apprenticeships in a different way. But again, be very, very happy to pick that feedback up in more detail with, I don't know if it was Councillor...
I just collated some questions from different people, but I can get back to them.
Julie Yates, my Head of Business Engagement, or myself, or John Baglow, our Head of Apprenticeships, would be very happy to pick that up and indeed pick your brains as to what was thought behind that.
Okay, thank you. And the next one, you've already spoken about the Turing programme, but you didn't mention any numbers. You said you had 200 on the Erasmus schemes, but...
We've got broadly similar on Turing. It is slightly more bureaucratic than Erasmus, which is surprising, potentially. And there are changes to next year's programme, but one of the big advantages of Turing over Erasmus is that it isn't limited, as Sean was describing, to Europe. So we have got some more interesting destinations. It is very popular. It is the right thing that we want to do for learners. We are an area where we have learners going out on Erasmus or Turing programmes for whom it is their first trip out of Devon, let alone out of the country. We always tell the anecdote of one student who, on the coach arriving on the M5, insisted on getting up and taking some photos because they'd heard of a motorway but never seen one, which is very, very sad. And it's something that we really want to address and make sure that all our programmes have access to Erasmus, Turing opportunities, and indeed some of our programmes also have student self-funded trips. There's a trip to South Africa, for example, that goes every couple of years to look at animal conservation. So some really great trips. We've got the feedback session next Tuesday from our group of students that have just been to Avoriaz in France. Lucky things, skiing, ice climbing, but also learning how to run a ski chalet. And it's always fascinating to hear the kind of context of those learners, who, some of whom are learning how to clean and cater for the very first time. Their parents are invited to those as well, and you always get some very interested parents whose first comment is, well, you've never done that at home, dear. So it is quite life-changing on a number of ways for our students, and we will continue to push governments to make that programme as widely available as possible.
Yeah. So is that something that you're hoping will grow? And
absolutely, we would like it to be available to every student, and also to support our opportunities to drive attendance and behaviours as well, so that it can be part of the reward model for that developing skill set.
Yeah. when we did a formal evaluation of our programme previously, 11% hadn't been out of the country previously. When they came back, the learners had better attendance and better attainment. So there was certainly a correlation there. The new scheme, as Bill said, covers the whole world, but the money is less and the bureaucracy is greater. And so we might look, and we've not yet achieved this, but I think there might be a nice connection with philanthropists, because one of the things from my experience that philanthropists quite often like is to be able to see firsthand the benefit of your giving that you make, and being able to sponsor somebody to take part on some of these programs is one of the ways, and then get a meet them on the way back and see what difference is made is something that I'm sure might be quite rewarding if we can package that together. But again, that's something that we would look to engage partners in.
I'm just looking to link that to other questions that come in around floating offshore wind, and slightly different. We had an exchange visit and have a signed memorandum of understanding with colleagues in Morocco. There's an institution over there called IFMERE, who are world leaders now in solar power. They work, as you would imagine, very closely with Xlinks, and the potential cable through to Averdiscot and the work there. So we're working closely with Xlinks.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Pennington, but we are looking to ensure that our students and their students have opportunities to understand the very different contexts of things like solar, where, frankly, in Morocco, land space is not an issue, whereas clearly over here, the availability of land for massive solar farms is such an issue. So we're trying to give that international context in a regional and local context as well.
I was just wondering whether, as a committee, we could contact central government and express our support after speaking to you and hearing your sort of passion for the Turing programme and the need for more of it, because we are isolated here, and you're talking about deprivation in Torridge, and it's really sort of life-changing for these young people.
If it would be helpful, Chair, I could guess our lead bid writer to draft you a letter that you might like to send.
Yeah, that would be really good. No, can we put that on the action list? We don't need, do we need to vote on it? No.
Well, I'll second it.
Councillor Hodson.
Sorry, just a quick question. We talk about what are the financial implications for students. You talk about bursaries, you talk about enabling people to do things with philanthropists funding them. What is it a scheme for those who have got access to funding?
No,
because it really concerns me sometimes these programmes require a lot of support from families.
So we ask for a contribution of £150 for the trips. If students are suffering hardship, whether that's FE or HE level, then we make sure that bursaries are available to them to support those trips. But we also find that it's still a lot of money, we appreciate that £150, but it does create a family and individual buy-in to the trip that if it is fully funded we sometimes don't get. But we will also help, for example, with the costs of applying for a passport if needed. So for students that have got genuine hardship, we will fully cover the cost. But our first ask is for that £150.
Thank you, because it isn't just the £150, it's kitting out your young person to go to another country, the right footwear, the right clothing, as you say so rightly, the passports, inoculations if they're going to a foreign country and they need to be.
So we have a hardship fund for 16 to 18s and for our adults, and we seek to ensure that that is available for any value-added programme that will support. There are rules that say that we can't certainly for 16 to 18-year-olds, charge for core, quite rightly for core education, but something like a Turing Erasmus programme, that's exactly what those bursaries are for, and we look sympathetically on requests for those.
Thank you, that's fantastic because the programme sounds incredible.
It's really good.
Thank you. Just on the hardship fund, is it fully used or do you get money left over year after year? Because I know some hardship funds around different organisations don't always get taken up.
It's mixed. So our 16 to 18 programme is generally fully utilised. Our adult programme has been less so. And we do really encourage all our students to check their eligibility and seek to make sure that our rules are as lenient as possible, and sometimes become more lenient during the year if we look like we will be underspending.
So would you need to, could you use more money if you had it in the hardship funds? Are you denying students because you run out of money?
Generally, the thing we could do with is more local flexibility in the criterion that can be applied, rather than necessarily more money. But if the rules were more flexible, then more money would be very welcome. And certainly we would never turn down the opportunity to spend more money on our students.
And one of those things that was raised previously about the digital disadvantage and a gap that we want to make sure that our learners have a minimum standard of digital technology available to them, and if there was a more generous program of that, we do provide laptops. That's one of the things that they're funded for. But you would be able to say, yeah, but have you got a smartphone as well? Have you got what about broadband connection at home? You know, equipping those learners so that they can take full advantage of the ways that they can learn would be a thing. So yeah, that was what we would do if we were, if we did get more money.
Are you aware of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation announcement this week?
Not an announcement this week.
Okay, it just stated that a third of the Torridge districts, and my deputy leader will say it's not in there, I've got to read it properly, but a third of households in Torridge are in deprivation with young families. And that is exclusion on its own merit, basically. So it goes back to the hardship questions again, because education provides the foundation for the stepping stones for the future. And we've got a lot of evidence here that there is need, and we would like to support you in need to get education to guys that are excluded from education, basically. Right. And that's the real message I would want to get across.
Thank you. It's a question about school counsellors and proactivity around our bullying policy.
Yeah, I guess that links in with mental health as well, which is another question later on.
Yeah, and I don't know whether the term counsellor is meant in the kind of professional counsellor sense, or whether it's people who will speak to students about their behaviour.
I think it might have been the wrong spelling, mightn't it?
We don't tolerate bullying at the college. We monitor those things very carefully. We have seen, as I said earlier, in terms of our safeguarding reports, an increase in incidents of peer-on-peer kind of safeguarding work. We take those, as I say, very serious. They involve a three-stage action plan that involves their parents as well, and can lead, if the learner doesn't modify their behaviour, to them being excluded, which is one of the is the follow-up part of that question. We usually find that process of education about why bullying isn't acceptable and why you're not going to get on in life if you carry on in that sort of way, means that we rarely have to exclude learners, but it's something that we will do if they, because you can't tolerate people adopting those sorts of behaviours in your college. Where are we?
pupils.
So that covered the excluding pupils. So you do sometimes, but very rarely.
Yes, we do, and there are red lines that we can't and won't tolerate, and then we will exclude.
And then next one. Are this current cohort of students more or less hopeful and aspirational than previous cohorts? Are they seeing more or less mental health issues with students than previously?
We covered the mental health bit earlier. Yes, we are seeing increased incidents of mental health issues and responding with a range of packages. The question about more or less hopeful or aspirational is an interesting one. And this cohort, I think, the first generation after, the first cohort after COVID, it wasn't they were less aspirational. I think they were felt liberated from being locked up in their bedrooms for a long period of time. But at the same time, hadn't had the sorts of things that give you a sense of purpose and what you might want to do, because you hadn't had a chance to do a work experience at an employer at school and then go, I'd quite like to be a dentist, or I could be an electrical engineer, and which gives you a kind of sense. So I continue to be amazed and at the ambition that our students have, and their effectiveness in realising that ambition and going on to do great things. I think they're hopeful, but also realistic about the state of the world at the moment, and so talking about those things is an important part of being at the college.
I think we still suffer from a number of students that don't realise just how talented they are. And certainly when you talk to students in the early days of their programmes, and they start to describe things that they understand, the things they know, how they might want to apply those, it is disappointing sometimes that they don't see that they are remarkable talents and that they can achieve probably more than they realise. I think our educators and our teams are very good at bringing out those strengths and those skills, where perhaps we as a region and as a locale still suffer is that those aspirations are often seen to only be fulfilled in the big cities and away from the area. And it's certainly something that we're working with local employers and events like today, Marine Futures and various other events, to really push into the minds of young people the opportunities that exist on their doorstep, and that you don't always need to move away to have the most fulfilling and broad-ranging career. And so we're trying to work with Paul, with TDK, with Krempel. I was with IGI today from Bideford. Some fantastic jobs that are available in the local area, and again, not trying to stop young people moving away and experiencing other parts, as we've described with Erasmus and Turing, but recognising you don't have to. So I think working together we can support young people in that aspiration raising.
Thank you. And the next one's about the childcare crisis. So I had someone, I've got two little ones myself, and talking to other parents, there is a real childcare crisis out there, and that knock-on impact on gender equality, because a lot of the time it does fall back on the mum to sort of take the kids to school and pick them up, and the knock-on effects of that on employment and education opportunities for women. And with that increase in funding that the government says they're providing from 9-month-old children within the next year, they're bringing that in. But who is going to look after these children which are going to be funded? Because there's already a struggle to find places. You have to, it says on here, you have to get your name on the list before you're even pregnant to find a childminder who lives near you. It's serious. So what is the college doing? Are you looking to educate more, recruit more childminders to be out there locally?
Two things actually. Yeah, and the one which is about that accessibility of opportunities for people with small children. When we talked about the adult experience and the design that we're trying to do on that, and start off with not, these are the things that we do and we push them at you, but to say, okay, well, what sort of experience are the learners that we're trying to attract looking for? And so one of those things is, can we put education for adults on at the times that it's convenient? And if you have got children and things, if you do, that's one of the complications in life, one of the things, but it may mean that you can't come along to your normal session on a Tuesday evening or whenever it is. I think part of the new offer that I'd like us to get to is that all of those sessions are recorded. So just if you do miss out, you don't miss out on your continued learning. If you're back home because your child's not well, then you can do something. The bigger response is around educating and training the people who will create that workforce that you highlight, or the comment highlights just here. So we have early years provision at level 2. We have an expanded provision we've had that in Barnstaple. We're looking to expand the provision in Tiverton, and then we have T levels that you can work to as well, that enables that kind of career progression, so that we've seen that same opportunity. This is the thing about looking at the changes in the labour market and regulation and saying, what's that going to mean for us as a college, and how can we make sure we respond? So we're expecting to see increasing applicants for those programmes that are there ready to meet that need. And well, I'll be very pleased if it does do, because more students is all good for us.
So you're going to go out there and promote it and say, come and learn,
yes,
be a childminder. And
absolutely.
Because there will be, well, there already is, there will be that need, I'm sure.
There is always the problem that there is an awful lot of minimum wage employment as well in those sectors, and we are working with childcare providers and others to increasingly talk about what creates the interest in working in that sector. So it is very much an employer college linked push to, and then into the schools to try and persuade young people and career changers and women returners in particular, that's a career that is available to them and a worthwhile one.
One of our learners last year, I think it was, off from the level 3 programme, got a place on the Norland Nannies programme, where it's the kind of the elite nannies programme, where they kind of provide that care to the stars and earn £70,000–80,000 a year providing those services. So that was quite a prestigious thing for that one to get. I think there's going to be a much bigger need locally for exactly the reasons that you mentioned. We talked a fair bit about the next bit and the opportunities and our responsibilities around the Celtic Sea opportunities and X-Links and what have you. Culture, do you want to say a bit about
we sit on the Cultural Strategy Board for Northern Devon. We are working actively with Chris Fuller here and with his equivalents within North Devon. We are looking as North Devon Futures as to how we ensure that the culture strategy is embedded across our piece. We see that as critical to developing sustainable communities and sustainable towns. And as I say, working with Chris and the Burton Art Gallery, for example, in opportunities for our students to engage more within culture. Increasingly popular over the last 3 years have been our performing arts, music and indeed fine art programmes at all levels. We'd expected them to drop off, particularly as there was the economic downturn. It's been quite the reverse. And we're working very, very closely with Alison Mills and that team on the Flourishing Culture Strategy.
That's good. I'm lead member for culture, so I'm pleased.
Oh, you're fantastic.
Thank you. And then, Councillor Hawkins, were these all your questions?
So, I have responsibility for the process for additional learning support, ALS, within the college, both for exam support and for initial assessment of need. I'm not aware that we have any particular backlog for in-college ALS assessments. There is a huge backlog for education, health and care plan assessments within the County Council, which they have a number of strategies to work on. But if there are specific issues that individuals are seeing, I'd be very happy to pick those up individually. I'm not aware of any particular issue, and the majority of ALS diagnosis is self-referral, so students letting us know that they have an additional need. We're looking at how we roll out more additional learning support for our apprenticeships, and making sure that the same opportunities to gain additional support run across all our programmes, and we've talked a bit about hardship as well. Specific question about the sandwich box or basement. The sandwich box is one of the hubs that Sean was talking about for students with additional needs. It's named the sandwich box. It got that name about 4 years ago when we sought to run it as a cafe, offering kind of Greggs-style food. It wasn't popular as an individual outlet, so we moved that across to the main food hall. We are looking at communal spaces and study areas. We are, unfortunately, one of the increasing number now of colleges that have reinforced aerated autoclave concrete in the building, and the reason that that's relevant is that it's taken out our primary study space, our learning resource centre, a big area of the college which had quiet study, had computer-based study space. We were expecting an announcement today which hasn't materialised from the Department for Education as to how they're going to support and indeed allow us to develop a response to that. We hope that we will have by the summer that space back in use, and therefore there will be more space available to students. In the meantime, we have looked to open up additional spaces and are happy to take further questions or suggestions on what other spaces might be needed. Again, one in my patch, affordable food options. We look to price our food competitively. We have a Costa outlet that is about 2/3, half of the high street price, but still expensive because of the on-costs of having the Costa brand. We have meal deals within our food hall. Food prices for us, just like food prices for everyone else, have gone through the roof. We do provide for those students that are eligible a £5 a day free meal that can be used for breakfast or lunch or both, which is increasingly used, I'm sad to say, and we try and make that available with the support of Devon County Council through the holidays. But again, happy to take any kind of detailed feedback on things that you think we could do better on that. And then the last two, I think we covered the law teacher, but Sean, I don't know if you wanted to say something about exam boards and universities.
In terms of information to universities about particular mitigating circumstances, they often don't take an awful lot of note in relation to those things. I had this involved with an awarding body last year that had difficulties, and the presentation of that information to universities was problematic. What we're looking to do more is to provide that additional support to try and make sure that the resultant slip grades, that we can recover those in time before the final exams would be the priority action for us, because I think it's the one that would be more effective in terms of helping those learners that have been affected to get where they need to get to.
Thank you very much for that very detailed presentation and answering all of our questions. I found it really useful. I think everyone else did. Take away a lot and talk about it at our parish council level and word of mouth. And yeah, it's been really, thank you for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the questions that's made us think about some things. So thank you.
Any other questions? I think we had quite a few. You're free to go. But stay in touch and we'll get a letter sorted about the Turing programme. That'd be... Yeah. Karen. Or is there anything else that, so we'll send that off. Is there anything else that we can do as a council? That's what we normally ask.
We have a conversation offline and come back to you, but from our perspective, very, very useful session. So thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Consideration of the forward plan, number 9. What forgot. So we've got, there we are, 13th of March, active torage and lendology are coming, and 24th of April, the Pickwell Foundation. I think active torage and lendology, they're definitely agreed to come, haven't they?
I plan to contact Judith Gentry tomorrow about active storage.
I declare an interest because I'm on the board for active storage.
There's been a lot tonight. Lendology confirmed at the meeting in December, so
Yeah.
Pickwell I was going to get in contact with as well. So.
And we don't go any further than that because it's the AGM. Is that right? Do we plan into the future? Or? No.
Definitely not considerable time there.
Yeah. But we have talked about Westwood Housing and Royal Mail.
Chair, I can add those on to underneath so they don't get forgotten about and we can look to put those on for the future, for next year.
Are you happy or would you rather the Royal Mail asked in maybe instead of the Pickwell Foundation?
Well, have you had a response from the Pickwell?
Have we invited Pickwell?
We have provisionally, yeah.
Well, it'll have to wait. I mean, I take Councillor Harding's point that, this is an ongoing problem and it's not going to be solved in a minute, if ever.
So if we have them down on the list for future invitations, Royal Mail, Post Office, and I think Westwood Housing's already on there, isn't it?
But by the autumn, hopefully, I think we need to do it this year.
Okay, is everyone happy?
Thank you.
I declare the meeting closed.